For 2 decades, tennis greatness has been defined by a sacred trinity: Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal, and Novak Djokovic. Together, they forged a chapter of dominance so absolute that entire generations of players could not crack their empire. Their numbers became the gold standard, their resilience in the grandest stages unmatched, their consistency a bar set almost impossibly high. The very identity of modern tennis has been written through their rivalries, their triumphs, and their longevity. But suddenly, the script is being rewritten. And it is not being rewritten by time, age, or the fading of legends. It is being rewritten by a 22-year-old Spaniard named Carlos Alcaraz. What once seemed like an exclusive kingdom guarded by 3 giants now has an invader whose trajectory is forcing the sport to reconsider its definition of excellence. His case is not built merely on trophies, though he has them, or rankings, though he has climbed to the very top. His claim is anchored in something much deeper: his efficiency against the very elite of tennis. Facing the best is the hardest measurement of greatness. Many players rise against lower-ranked opponents, but crumble when the true giants stand across the net. Alcaraz is the opposite. He thrives in the spotlight, his best emerging against the highest caliber. And the numbers prove it. In 41 matches against top 5 ranked players, Alcaraz has won 28 and lost just 13. That is a 68.3% winning rate. A statistic that doesn't just impress, it shocks. For comparison, Djokovic, the greatest statistical force among the big 3 in this category, owns around 60% success across more than 200 matches against top 5 opposition. Nadal stands at 59.6%, Federer at 58.1%. Alcaraz is not merely close to them. He is ahead of them. At an age when Federer was still carving his identity, when Nadal had yet to step fully beyond clay, when Djokovic had not yet started his 2011 revolution, Alcaraz is already surpassing their efficiency against the toughest opponents. And then comes the comparison that defines this generation: Jannik Sinner. The Italian has already faced top 5 players in 52 matches, yet his record is only 24 wins, 28 losses. That's 46.1%, nearly 20 points lower than Alcaraz. The gap is not a minor detail. It paints a picture of 2 rivals charting dramatically different courses. One carving legend after legend, the other searching for consistency. This statistical gulf is no abstraction. It is made of flesh, sweat, and pivotal nights under the lights. Just last week in Tokyo, Alcaraz defeated Taylor Fritz in the ATP 500 final, another top 5 scalp for his collection. For Sinner, his last such victory stretches back to Wimbledon, and ironically, it came against Alcaraz himself. That was his only top 5 victory in their last 8 meetings. The head-to-head itself tells the story. Alcaraz leads Sinner 11-6. Each time the Spaniard wins, not only does Sinner's momentum falter, but the statistical chasm widens. Their rivalry is beginning to look less like a duel of equals and more like a narrative of pursuit, where one chases and the other dictates the pace of history. But what makes this even more remarkable is how early Alcaraz established this identity. His first top 5 victory came in 2021 at the US Open, when as a teenager he stunned the tennis world by defeating Stefanos Tsitsipas. That moment was more than an upset. It was a prophecy. Here was not just a teenager playing with no fear, but a teenager who thrived in fear itself. The Madrid Masters in 2022 sealed the message. In 1 week, Alcaraz defeated Nadal, Djokovic, and Alexander Zverev, all top 5 players at the time, on his way to the title. That run stands as one of the clearest demonstrations of modern tennis fearlessness, a template for how Alcaraz faces greatness head-on, without flinching, without bowing. This is not just about percentages. It is about aura. Alcaraz does not shrink under the biggest lights. He grows taller. He has made it clear that pressure does not suffocate him, it fuels him. His record against the top 5, unprecedented at this stage, is not simply numbers on paper. It is evidence of a champion born not in comfort, but in fire. This is only the beginning. If you want every breaking update on Alcaraz's rise and the battles that will shape the future of tennis, subscribe now to World News Tennis and don't miss what comes next. Tennis greatness is not only measured at the summit. It is also tested across the unforgiving terrain of the top 10 and top 20 players, the very backbone of the ATP elite. This is where momentum is built, where consistency is forged, and where champions prove they are not just capable of winning a single battle, but of sustaining a campaign against constant fire. And in this arena, Carlos Alcaraz's record is already astonishing. Against top 10 opponents, the Spaniard has contested 71 matches, winning 48 and losing 23. That equates to a 67.6% success rate. At first glance, this number alone would be considered exceptional for any player under 25. But when compared to the historical standards set by the Big Three, it becomes even more staggering. Only Novak Djokovic stands above him, with a career success rate of 68.6% against top 10 opposition. However, Djokovic's figure comes after 262 victories across more than a decade of battles. Alcaraz, at just 22 years old, is already breathing down that record. Nadal, for perspective, stands at 63.9%, Federer at 64.5%. And then comes the generational rival, Sinner. Despite his larger sample size, Sinner's record is 49 wins in 85 matches, just 57.6%. That is barely above the 50-50 threshold, and crucially, it places him more than 10 percentage points behind Alcaraz. The contrast once again highlights not just a rivalry of equals, but a divide in efficiency and resilience when it matters most. When the lens widens to top 20 opponents, the story sharpens further. Alcaraz has already compiled 87 victories in 123 matches against players ranked between 1 and 20. That is a 70.7% winning percentage. Once again, he stands not below but above two of the greatest ever. Nadal's lifetime figure sits at 70.3%, Federer at 70.1%. Djokovic edges slightly ahead with 72.7%. The implication is clear. At 22, Alcaraz is already producing statistical outputs that mirror and in some cases surpass those who spent decades building their resumes. What Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic constructed through years of evolution across different surfaces, different rivals, and different eras, Alcaraz is matching in just a handful of seasons. Skeptics will argue sample size. It is true, the Big Three built their numbers across careers that spanned 2 decades. Alcaraz has only a few years at the top. But therein lies the breathtaking reality. To even appear in the same statistical conversation so early is historic. To surpass those percentages at 22 is beyond precedent. Consider what it means. In tennis, experience usually beats raw talent in high-pressure encounters. Alcaraz is tearing that rule apart. His youth, far from being a disadvantage, has become a weapon. He combines explosiveness with composure, raw audacity with efficiency that typically belongs only to seasoned veterans. And then there is the comparison with Sinner once again. The Italian, himself a prodigy, has struggled to turn raw talent into the same consistent domination against the very best. His 64.2% success rate against top 20 opposition is respectable, but when placed next to Alcaraz's towering 70.7%, it reinforces the psychological narrative. One thrives on elite pressure, the other wrestles with it. The foundation of Alcaraz's supremacy lies not only in his physical arsenal, the ferocious forehand, lightning speed, acrobatic reflexes, but also in his mentality. He does not see legends as untouchable. He sees them as opportunities. Matches against Nadal, Djokovic, or Federer were never approached as lessons. They were approached as conquests. That psychological disposition now shapes his encounters with peers. Sinner, Rune, Fritz, Medvedev, they all face not just a player, but a presence. Alcaraz steps onto the court carrying an aura of inevitability that once belonged only to the Big Three. His rivals know that defeating him requires not only physical endurance, but an unshakable belief. And belief is often the first casualty when Alcaraz stares across the net. This is why his numbers transcend statistics. They represent a cultural shift. For nearly 20 years, the sport feared a vacuum after Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic faded. Analysts wondered, could tennis survive the twilight of its golden age? Alcaraz has answered. Not only will tennis survive, it may be entering another golden age, one fueled by his relentless hunger. In this sense, every percentage point matters. Every top 5 win, every top 10 conquest, every top 20 dominance is not just a statistic, it is a message. Alcaraz is not waiting to inherit the sport. He is already reshaping it. Statistics alone do not crown champions. Numbers are the evidence, but history remembers moments. In the case of Carlos Alcaraz, those moments have already piled up into a resume that feels less like a rising stars and more like a fully formed legends. The first of these defining moments came in 2021 at the US Open, when Alcaraz, still a teenager, stepped into Arthur Ashe Stadium and stunned the world by defeating Stefanos Tsitsipas. It was not just the scoreline that shocked, it was the attitude. Alcaraz did not play like a newcomer testing his limits. He played like a warrior demanding entry into the upper courts of history. That match was not merely an upset, it was a declaration. From that point, his trajectory only accelerated. The Madrid Masters of 2022 stands as perhaps the clearest demonstration of his fearlessness. Within the span of one unforgettable week, Alcaraz defeated Rafael Nadal, Novak Djokovic, and Alexander Zverev, all ranked inside the top 5 at the time. To beat one of them on clay is extraordinary. To beat all three consecutively in front of a Spanish crowd was seismic. It was as though the old order was being challenged directly in its own cathedral. Madrid 2022 was not just a tournament, it was an act of symbolic conquest. Then came Wimbledon 2023, the match that many hailed as the passing of the torch. On the sacred grass of the All England club, Alcaraz faced Djokovic in a final that seemed scripted to reinforce Novak's dominance. Instead, Alcaraz produced one of the greatest performances of his career. After losing the first set badly, he regrouped, steadied his nerves, and struck back with resilience that belied his age. He toppled Djokovic in 5 sets, a victory that did more than win him a Grand Slam. It shifted the mythology of tennis itself. That day, commentators, players, and fans alike saw more than a champion lifting a trophy. They saw the future of tennis crystallizing in real time. Djokovic, the iron wall of the sport, had been breached at his strongest fortress. The message was unmistakable. The era of inevitability surrounding the Big Three had ended, and Alcaraz was the one holding the torch. Even his defeats have added weight to his legacy. Losses to Sinner, to Djokovic, or to Medvedev often come in battles that stretch into the extremes of endurance, matches where Alcaraz demonstrates not weakness but resilience. And crucially, he learns from them. This was clear in Tokyo 2025. Just days after falling to Taylor Fritz at the Laver Cup, Alcaraz met him again in the ATP 500 final. The narrative was ripe for revenge, and Alcaraz delivered. In straight sets, he outclassed Fritz, not only avenging his defeat but adding another top 5 victory to his collection. This adaptability, this hunger to avenge losses and grow from them, is what separates great players from transcendent ones. Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic all had their moments of devastating defeat. What turned them into icons was their response. Alcaraz is already showing that same pattern of rebounding stronger, turning losses into fuel. Each milestone has become a building block in the construction of his aura. Tsitsipas at the US Open was the arrival. Madrid 2022 was the coronation. Wimbledon 2023 was the passing of the torch. Tokyo 2025 was the revenge. Together, these moments form a storyline that feels accelerated compared to those who came before. Where Federer needed years to carve out his Wimbledon dominance, where Nadal needed time to establish himself beyond clay, where Djokovic's rise came in a long, grinding climb, Alcaraz has compressed the process into just a few seasons. This speed matters. Legends are typically recognized in hindsight, their careers evaluated after decades of brilliance. But with Alcaraz, recognition is happening in real time. He is not waiting to be celebrated. He is forcing the celebration, point by point, match by match. And that immediacy carries cultural weight. Fans no longer speak of the future of tennis when they talk about Alcaraz. They speak of the present. Analysts no longer wonder whether he will live up to his potential. They wonder how high the ceiling really is. Rivals no longer see him as a rising star. They see him as the benchmark. Each defining victory has brought him closer to rewriting the mythology of the sport. And if history is any guide, these moments are just the beginning. For Federer, the turning point was Wimbledon 2003. For Nadal, it was Roland Garros 2005. For Djokovic, it was his 2011 season. For Alcaraz, the turning points are already here, and they are happening faster than anyone imagined. The foundation of Carlos Alcaraz's greatness is already staggering. At 22 years old, he has surpassed statistical benchmarks that Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic needed years, sometimes a decade, to establish. He has forged defining moments that resonate not only as victories but as symbols. And he has carved an aura that shifts the psychology of his rivals. But one question looms above it all. Can he sustain this? Longevity is the ultimate test in tennis. Federer's grace extended his career into his late 30s. Nadal's willpower brought him back from countless injuries. Djokovic's discipline has allowed him to remain dominant well into his mid-30s. For Alcaraz, the years ahead will not only test his talent, they will test his resilience against time, pressure, and the inevitable toll of the sport. The calendar is relentless. The physical demands of playing across hard, clay, and grass surfaces take their toll even on the fittest athletes. Nadal's knees, Federer's back, Djokovic's elbow, each bore the scars of the grind. For Alcaraz, the challenge will be avoiding the injuries that can derail even the brightest careers. His explosive movement, his violent forehand, his constant willingness to engage in long rallies, all of these are weapons, but they also increase the risk. Managing that risk will be key. Mental fatigue is another adversary. For nearly 2 decades, the Big Three carried the weight of constant expectation. Every tournament, every final, every headline. The same weight now falls on Alcaraz. To surpass them, he must carry not just the physical burden of competition, but the psychological one of inevitability. Each match he plays is not only about winning, it is about confirming his place at the top. That pressure has broken many before him. The question is whether it will harden or crack Alcaraz. And yet, his trajectory suggests he thrives under such weight. His adaptability, the ability to rebound quickly after losses, as seen in his revenge against Fritz in Tokyo, demonstrates a resilience that goes beyond talent. Where others might stumble, Alcaraz recalibrates. Where others might feel suffocated, he finds energy. This is the mental steel that could carry him across decades, the same steel that allowed Djokovic to reign longer than anyone imagined. The comparison with the Big Three is inevitable. Federer needed Wimbledon 2003 to launch his dynasty. Nadal needed Roland Garros 2005. Djokovic needed his 2011 revolution. For Alcaraz, the milestones are already here. US Open 2021, Madrid 2022, Wimbledon 2023, Tokyo 2025. The timeline has been compressed. What the legends built across 10 years, Alcaraz has touched in 4. If he sustains this trajectory for another 10, the statistical mountain may tilt in his favor. It is not fantasy. It is statistical probability. His 70.7% success rate against top 20 opponents, his 67.6% against top 10, his 68.3% against top 5, these are not numbers of a promising talent. They are numbers of an all-time great in the making. If preserved over time, they do not just match the Big Three, they surpass them. Yet even beyond the numbers, the symbolism of Alcaraz's rise matters. For nearly 20 years, tennis fans feared what would happen when Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic stepped away. Would the sport collapse into mediocrity? Would the aura of inevitability disappear? Alcaraz has answered with a resounding no. Instead of decline, tennis has been renewed. Instead of a vacuum, it has found continuity. And instead of 3 names, it now has 4. But perhaps the most important truth is this: Alcaraz does not appear to be chasing shadows. He is not obsessed with Federer's artistry, Nadal's clay dominance, or Djokovic's longevity. He is writing his own chapter, on his own terms. His style is distinct, his aura unique, his mentality forged in a different era of preparation, science, and mental training. He is not merely inheriting the throne. He is reshaping it. The future, of course, remains unwritten. Injuries, rivals, and the passage of time will all play their part. But the patterns are undeniable. With 28 top 5 victories already, with Grand Slam triumphs that shift the mythology of the sport, with rivalries that push him to grow sharper, Alcaraz stands not just as the future of tennis but as its present. And if his trajectory continues, the unthinkable may happen. The era of Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, once thought untouchable, could be surpassed by a Spaniard barely in his 20s. The possibility alone is enough to force the tennis world to prepare for a reality few dared imagine: that the greatest era of tennis might not be behind us, but ahead.